In this video, I want to go through what I feel are some really important tips when it comes to learning about how to deal with emotions. And these are tips which I gathered from a variety of places over a number of years through training, through personal exploration and experimentation. And they're really some of the most crucial tips for learning how to manage our emotions. So I've got my little list here. And the first thing, obviously, is to understand, well, what are emotions? Now, I talk about this in more detail in other videos, but the basics of what emotions are is that they are a feedback system. They're an internal feedback system from within our body to tell us how we're feeling about what is happening in our life, or even how we're feeling about what's happening just within ourselves, nothing to do with anything else. So in other words, they're a feedback system from the environment, and they're also a feedback system from our internal environment, which is really a lot to do with our mind and our thoughts. So whether they're positive or negative, they're all feedback. And the reason that they are so-called positive or negative is because they're designed to feel differently so that we take notice of what feels good and what doesn't feel good, because the good feeling emotions are a sign that we're on track, and the not so good feeling emotions, which people tend to call negative emotions, are a sign that something is amiss. Something is wrong, something needs attending to, and so whether they're good or bad, they're all actually good, because they're all highly intelligent, and they're our body's way of communicating with us. Which brings me to the next topic, which is understanding the difference between body intelligence and head intelligence. So in our Western society, we're highly trained to use our head intelligence, which is our head brain, our thinking, our analysing, our rationalising. This is what the head brain is for. But we have other intelligences in our body. And we could sum up one of these other intelligences as body intelligence. And our body intelligence doesn't speak to us through thoughts. It speaks to us through felt sensations, which are generated from within the body, and we describe these felt sensations as emotions or feelings, or maybe just a gut feeling. So in the 3 levels of communication video in this program, I talk about how the sensations turn into stress and emotions and then turn into symptoms, so I'm not going to go into that here. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that we have this body intelligence system, and it generates these felt sensations which we can describe and interpret as emotions, and it's our job to take notice of this feedback, to notice it and to be able to interpret it, and then to know what to do about it. So the next thing that I want to mention is the fact that negative emotions are toxic to the body. Positive emotions are beneficial, they're healthy, they have a healthy effect, literally at a chemical, cellular level, hormonal level inside the body. When we feel joy, happiness, contentment, compassion, love, all these positive emotions, they literally turn on certain secretions in the body which we call hormones, and these have a positive effect inside the cells, tissues and organs of our body, and that will lead to greater well-being and also greater health. However, toxic emotions do the opposite. They turn on other hormones and secretions in the body, which, if this goes on for too long, it will have a detrimental effect in the body. It will literally cause the cells to rewire into what we call a state of dis-ease, which eventually can lead to a state of disease. So we really have to learn how to deal with our negative emotions and prevent them causing toxic effects inside the body. So if I just pick one of these emotions, which is one of the 7 top toxic emotions in this program, anger. Now, as we know and we go into in the program, every cell, tissue and organ in the body has a physical and a metaphysical function. So if we look at the liver, one of the functions is to deal with toxins, to eliminate toxins, to clean those out. Well, the liver is related with anger, and anger is one of the most toxic emotions. If we store anger inside us and that builds up to resentment, maybe even rage, we're literally damaging our internal organs and we're harming ourselves. And that will have a whole heap of consequences, both in terms of how happy we feel and also how healthy we are. For example, if people hold on to lots of anger and resentment, that's going to affect the gallbladder and the liver, and that will have potentially a cause of gallbladder stones. And this is why a lot of people have their gallbladder removed, when actually if they were to deal with the root emotional cause, they could save themselves the trouble of having that happen. So we really can do so much to change our body from the inside out by managing our emotions. So the next thing I want to mention is the fact that emotions are irrational and thoughts are rational, and feelings can't be thought away. Now, most people are unaware of this, and they're also unaware of how to manage their emotions. In many cases, we're not even aware that we're even feeling something. It's absolutely amazing how we can have a whole load of sadness or anger or fear or loneliness or whatever emotion, hurt, betrayal, going on inside of us, but we're either unaware of it or half aware of it, and unconsciously, through habit, pushing these emotions away, pushing them under the carpet, hiding them, swallowing them, suppressing them, all these different things that we tend to do with our emotions until we learn how to manage them. But emotions are irrational and thoughts are rational. And this means that we have to deal with emotions differently from how we might think we need to deal with them. We can't think our feelings away. This means we're going to have to be experiential in managing our feelings. One of the things that we're going to have to do is to become aware of how we're feeling and how different feelings feel inside of us, where those feelings are generated inside of us. Literally, what part of the body do we feel those feelings in? What do they feel like? In order to be able to identify them, in order to be able to clear them. So this means we're going to have to get out of our head and into our body. We're going to have to stop staying stuck in our head with all our thinking, and we're going to have to go below the neck into our body and actually connect with how we're feeling at a felt sense sensation inside the body. Now, if you haven't done this before, this is a new skill, and it is a skill like any skill which can be learned and practiced and mastered. So dealing with emotions is not an intellectual process. And this is one of the things that can really keep people stuck. And in the lesson about being stuck in the story, I talk about this, and I talk about how we get out of the head and into the body to actually finally clear those emotions that may have been bugging us for days, weeks, or months. So this brings me to the next topic, which is related, which is what I call whole body learning. When we go to school, we learn to learn with our head, all this analysing, rationalising, learning facts, regurgitating facts. It's all head-brain stuff. But that is a very limited type of learning. True learning is actually using our whole body, and in particular using our heart. And in Qigong we call this using our heart consciousness. And this is a much deeper type of learning than just the head learning. The information goes much deeper and it brings much deeper insights. So when we're learning about emotions and also about our consciousness and transforming ourselves, we really need to use whole body learning and learn a new different way of learning. So that brings me to the next topic, our multiple brains, or our three brains. We don't just have a brain in the head, we have two other brains. We have a heart brain and a gut brain. And the definition of a brain is a network of neurons with intelligent purpose. And science has proven for a long time now that we have neurons in our heart and we have neurons in our gut. And in the 3 brain video I go into great detail of explaining exactly how many neurons are in each brain and the functions of each brain. But the point that I want to make here is that when we're learning to deal with our emotions, we're going to get more in touch with these 3 brains, and we're going to learn which brains tend to correlate with different emotions, because remember, emotions are all feedback. They're an internal guidance system giving us valuable feedback, and this feedback is often coming from one of the 3 brains or one or more of the 3 brains. But ultimately what we need to do is to learn how to use these 3 brains as a team, because they're designed to be used as a team. Now, another really important thing to understand when we start learning how to manage our own emotions is that we're going to start feeling our emotions more. If we've had a lifetime of unconsciously suppressing, ignoring, pushing under the carpet, pushing away, whatever word you want to use, doing all of that with our emotions, when we've been doing that, then that means in general that we're not really feeling our emotions. We're not in touch with them, we don't notice them, we're emotionally disconnected. Now, when we make a commitment to start clearing our emotions and getting rid of them and managing them, then it makes sense to say that we're going to start feeling more. And often what this can feel like is a spike in emotions, and it can feel like we have more emotions than we did before, and we can start thinking to ourselves, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming, this is too much, and thoughts like that. And that comes because we're at the beginning journey of our learning to deal with our feelings, and it's just bringing some fear and some overwhelm to the surface. However, what's important to recognize is it's not that you're having more emotions, it's that you're becoming more aware of the emotions that were already there, but which you were suppressing and ignoring up until now. So we have to be ready for this potential spike, if you like, in emotions, and be aware that this will be temporary. This is a temporary phase which will pass as we become more in touch with our feelings. But the other thing that is really important and useful and positive to know about this is that our body intelligence is so wise, it will never give us more than we can deal with. Even though it feels like that sometimes, it just won't. It will only give us what we can deal with at any given time. So it's really important to bear that in mind and know that even if things are feeling a little bit overwhelming, you are only being given what you can deal with, and you will get through it. And the last thing that I want to mention is what I call the healing response, the emotional healing response. When we start to do healing work on ourselves, the old energy and information which we're wanting to get rid of will start to leave our body. It will start to leave all parts of us, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And as that energy and information leaves us, we can re-experience it. In other words, if old emotional energy is clearing from the cells, such as anger, sadness, hurt, whatever the emotions are, we can re-experience that energy, and then we can sometimes get caught in the trap of thinking that something is wrong, that we're feeling worse, that it's not working. Actually, it is working. That energy is being felt, and those emotions are being felt because they're leaving the body. So we need to actually congratulate ourselves because this is a positive sign. Now, it can take a while to become masterful of noticing when one is having an emotional healing response as opposed to when one is just experiencing an emotion. But that will come with practice. But it's a really important thing to start to become aware of, because then we don't get trapped in thinking that things aren't working or that we're going backwards. So I'll give you an example of an emotional healing response which I experienced some years ago. For many years I experienced depression, which, as you learn in this program and other programs, is the depressing or the suppressing of emotions. But for many years I experienced depression, and then I did all this work to understand, well, what are the emotions beneath it that I've been suppressing, and I basically healed the depression without having to take medication or supplements or anything else. But some years later, I did some intense personal development training, part of my professional training, and a couple of weeks later, I suddenly woke up one day in a deep depression, and it just didn't make sense. And I didn't really recognize what was going on for the first day, but the second day I asked myself, okay, could this be a healing response after this deep personal development work that I've been doing? And I held it as a possibility that it might be a healing response. And I treated it as if it was a healing response, which meant I didn't go into negativity and thinking, oh, this is terrible and this is wrong and this is a mistake. I looked at it instead as if, wow, this could be some old energy and information that is finally exiting my body. And yes, within 3 days, the depression just disappeared. So it had been a healing response. So one of the tricks to understanding a healing response is that it is temporary and it will pass. It is just the phase of that energy and information leaving the body. Now, often healing responses can happen within 12 to 72 hours after having some sort of healing session. They can appear later, as in the example I've just given, but generally speaking, they tend to happen within a day, an hour, a few days of something happening that was something to do with some healing work that you've been doing. So look out for the healing response. It will change your perspective on what is going on inside of you if you understand this. So these are some of the very important tips that I wanted to share with you. If you understand them, they will significantly help you on your journey to emotional mastery.